Over the last 2 to 3 weeks, the nation has been agog with the debate over the Citizenship Amendment Bill, or CAB in short. We saw heated discussions not just in the Lok Sabha and Rajya Sabha, as the bills were piloted by the Home Minister Shri Amit Shah. But there were many people who were asking me and many of my friends too as to what is the CAB all about. Why is there so much of anxiety and protest that happened with the CAB bill being passed in the parliament? Let's go back and understand the issue at depth. When India and Pakistan were bifurcated in 1947, Muhammad Ali Jinnah wanted a state, or wanted a country rather, for Muslims. This was ratified in 1946 through an election in which only Muslims participated in a separate electoral law, in which they elected the Indian Union Muslim League, or the Muslim League as it was called then, into a body that could decide their future. Predictably after that, Jinnah raised the ante and formed a separate nation for Pakistan, which came into being on the 14th of August 1947. India became independent a day later on 15th August 1947. What happened in the process of taking a decision to bifurcate India and Pakistan was the fact that millions of people moved from India to Pakistan and Pakistan to India. Both the governments gave the option for people, Muslims, Hindus, Christians, Sikhs, everybody, every Indian citizen or then to be Pakistani citizen, the option of moving to either of these countries. Definitely, a lot of Hindus decided to stay back in India, so did a certain percentage of Muslims. So what Pakistan principally being a Muslim state, it was not Islamic at that point in time, decided that they would kind of have a citizenship that is based purely on Islamic ideals, which was later promulgated as a state policy. So what happened? What happened to the Indians who stayed back in Pakistan, what was then West Pakistan, and then we had East Pakistan? It was only in 1971 that Bangladesh came into being after the 71 war, in which Pakistan surrendered and separate state or separate country of Bangladesh came into being. But we need to understand where the genesis started. The genesis started post 1971 when millions of refugees fleeing the persecution from different groups that were fighting for liberation in Bangladesh moved over to the northeastern states. Assam directly took the brunt of it. Predictably, it was the biggest state, very close to Bangladesh, and it took the whole lot of refugees from there. Along with them, a lot of refugees also moved into West Bengal, also into the northeastern states, the hilly states as we call them later. There comes the problem. What happens if you are in your house and somebody else comes and says, can I stay here for a few days? I have a small problem. You might accommodate him or her saying that fine, you can stay here for a few days, but after that you'll have to leave. But then that person decides, no, I'm not going to leave, I'm going to stay in your house. That becomes a problem. So I'm trying to explain in a very, very kind of general manner, a matter of fact as to what the genesis of the problem is. So along the people who who actually moved out from Bangladesh, who had to flee because of the persecution there, were Hindus to a large extent and some Muslims and Buddhists. But to a large extent they were Hindus. But the Muslims also settled. We saw how the population in West Bengal went up dramatically, and also in Assam, where the percentage of Muslims as a part of the general population went up. This all resulted in a huge agitation in the 80s. After Mr. Rajiv Gandhi had become the Prime Minister, the All Assam Students Union was from the front leading this fight. And after that, an agreement was signed between Rajiv Gandhi and the All Assam Students Union, which directly meant that the Students Union demand that the culture of Assam, that's what they were worried about. They said we will be wiped out with the Bengali influence coming in from Bangladesh into Assam and other northeastern states as well, that our culture, our cuisine, our music, our food, our films, everything should be preserved. The government agreed. They decided to set up a committee under Section 6 when the Rajiv Asu Accord was signed. But that committee never came into being. True, over the years, especially after the Modi Sarkar took over, There were certain institutes like the Film Institute there. We had certain cuisine being promulgated for the Northeast. I mean, food habits. These are all sought to be preserved. Music, culture, everything was sought to be preserved. So different institutions were being set up to ensure that these things didn't go out of the window. Along the way, this particular problem also emanated from Pakistan. With the data that I have with me, I am told that more than a lakh of people were in India from 1951 onwards trying to get citizenship of India. Many of them settled in Jammu and Kashmir, which due to Article 370, they could not get citizenship. But many settled in Punjab, Rajasthan, Haryana and all the other north states. There was a problem. The then government of India, of course, mostly under the Congress rule, refused to give them refugee status, later on gave them the refugee status, but refused to give them citizenship. The problem lay in what we call the Citizens Amendment Bill. And the government of the day, which is the Narendra Modi government, now decided to amend it. Amend it and do what? They said for 6 religions, okay, Hindus, Christians, Sikhs, Parsis, Jains and Buddhists, those who are refugees in India and who have been staying here for a minimum of then 11 years, but now it's been reduced to 5 years, will be given citizenship based on certain documents. If they don't have documents, the other way is to prove that they are Hindus from Pakistan. Remember, when Pakistan was bifurcated, a majority of the Hindus who stayed back were Dalits, mostly SCSTs, and these people were used by the Pakistani establishment for sanitary purposes, that is to clean toilets, to clean the roads, to do all kind of dirty jobs. Even today, the Pakistani government, when they advertise for openings in the sanitary department in the country, in different portions of the country, they specifically mention Hindus only can apply. That is possibly the only place where Hindus get a prominence, because they don't want the Muslims to work as sanitary workers. And these people were leading a horrible life. As you know, the percentage of population in Pakistan at that point in time, when India became independent and Pakistan was 24%. Today, it is 3%. In Bangladesh, we'll take 71 as the cutoff mark, it was 24%. Today, it is 7%. Where did these people go? They could have just disappeared on the face of the earth. Something happened to them. 2 things happened. One, they were killed, or they migrated, or what really happened, they were forcibly converted to Islam. In case of Bangladesh, it was a different ballgame altogether, because the people could move across a porous border between India and Bangladesh into different Indian states. But when it comes to Pakistan, with a heavy fortified line of control and the actual border, the people found it tough to move. So they had to take visas. Even today, the government of India, for example, issues a limited number of visas every year, which the Hindus, Sikhs, mostly use to come to India, and once they come to India, they refuse to leave and they become refugees here and they get that status. With the passage of this bill, what you're now going to see is that most of the citizens, according to the Intelligence Bureau, more than 30,000 of Hindus, Sikhs, Parsis, of course, as I said, the majority of Hindus and Sikhs, smattering of Christians who were actually converts from the Hindu religion itself in Pakistan. But more importantly, 90% Hindus and 10% of Sikhs who are going to get it. There are about 30,000 people who will immediately get citizenship as soon as the law is signed into a decree by the President of India, which has happened yesterday. But let us look at why the problem is happening in the Northeast. A lot of people have a doubt saying, will I become stateless? This is because the confusion between the National Register for Citizens, which is the NRC, and the CAB. The NRC exercise, which was under the Supreme Court, which we saw was conducted in Assam only, principally because that is the state that bore the brunt of people moving in from Bangladesh. So the government of India wanted to know one simple thing. Are you a citizen of India? If not, please produce the documents. If you are, also produce the documents, and then we will see whether those documents are valid. Otherwise, we won't recognize you as a citizen. What effectively happened was, after the NRC in Assam was done, and Assam has a different kind of NRC from the rest of India, and this is what you need to understand. In Assam, the NRC was done on a matter of descent. That is, you have to prove that your grandfather or great-grandfather, father and you were in the same state. That is what you have to prove. So by documents, you have to prove that your grandfather was there, which means you automatically get the citizenship, or you were a resident of Assam. But in other Indian states, as the government of India now proposes, the Modi government now proposes to do NRC across the country, it will be by your birth. That means you will have to produce a birth certificate of your father and mother or yourself as a 10th class, or by any other 12 documents that have been asked: passport, ration card, voter card, but not the Aadhaar card. Aadhaar is not accepted as a proof of date of birth, but everything else, the 12 documents which have been listed in NRC. So NRC is a different ball game altogether. Let's not mix up NRC with CAB. The CAB is purely to give citizenship to the refugees. So why is there such a huge objection from certain communities, particularly the politicians of certain communities? That is because they feel we have left out Muslims. The Modi government has in fact agreed for 6 religious communities, but did not give the same facilities to Muslims. The argument by the Modi government, as enunciated by Amit Shah ji in the parliament, was that why should we give refugee status to Muslims? Because all the 3 countries, Afghanistan, Pakistan and Bangladesh, are all Islamic countries. In their constitution, they defined that they are Islamic countries. So if you are an Islamic country, would you ill-treat your own citizens, that is the Muslims? No. There were argument that, for example, the Muhajirs, and of course we have the Ahmadiyas, are also kind of targeted. Even the Shias are targeted in Pakistan. But their population has not gone down as drastically as I told you earlier about the Indian state or the Hindus and other communities. This is the problem. So in Assam, the problem is exclusion, not inclusion. The Assamese are worried that they will have to take in more number of Hindu Bengalis, that is Hindu Bengali speaking communities and people. That will alter, one, their job opportunities, it will alter their culture, the way of life and everything. But the government of India, as you know, has certain northeastern states already have the protection. One is called the inner line permits, because most of the northeast are tribal areas, heavily forested areas. The government of India in the past has ensured that even you and me as a citizen, when we go into certain states like Nagaland and Manipur, we need to take a permit, which is called the inner line permit, to enter those states. And we have to come back in a certain number of days. You can't stay there forever. This is to ensure that the people in those areas who are the tribals, their way of life is protected. It appears to, this is happening across the country, even in certain states like Andhra, for example, the Araku region, or even Kerala, the Wayanad, the Attapadi region. They have certain rules that you cannot enter those tribal areas and stay there. The land is reserved for them. But in case of Assam, this is a problem. The Assamese have a feeling that this particular bill will immediately give title, that is the residential title, and also the citizenship to those 10 lakhs or the 17 lakhs people who are left out of the NRC. Most importantly, remember the kind of dialogue that the Shiv Sena was giving, that these people should not be given voting rights. Many politicians, especially the secular politicians, if you want to name them, are scared that if this Hindu-speaking people or Hindi-speaking North Indians or Bengali-speaking people moving into Assam, they kind of get their voting, the Hindus or Sikhs, the Parsis, the Christians and others, they will be obligated to the Modi Sarkar, and they may in the end up voting, because they will definitely become the voters tomorrow. So in a state like Bengal, for example, the Muslim communities now will be under NRC. They will be checked, but Mamata Banerjee says she won't allow CAB, nor will she allow NRC. But being a central government notification, Mamata Banerjee has no right. In fact, she can be disqualified. She, Pinarayi Vijayan or even Captain Amrinder Singh can be disqualified from their post, because when they took oath of office, they said we will preserve, protect and defend the Constitution of India as by law established. And if they don't do that, they can be dismissed. But that's for a debate for a different rate. But today we are talking strictly about the conditions that have been set by the government of India for a refugee to become an Indian citizen, as we saw from these 3 countries. Afghanistan also had thousands of Indians, and we saw what happened to them post the kind of attacks with Al-Qaeda and later on the destruction of the Bamiyan Buddhas. There were a lot number of Sikhs there, but there are hardly about 7,000 people left today. That's what happened. People from those areas. So why not Myanmar? The argument is, why not we give it to the people from Myanmar? Why not we give it to the Rohingyas? Well, the Rohingyas first don't qualify because they are Muslims. As per this law, right or wrong, it is purely meant for Hindus, Christians, Sikhs, Jains, as I mentioned, other communities that are the Parsis and others, Buddhists also. So they are disqualified. Then came the question, why were the Sri Lankans given citizenship? Over a crore of Sri Lankans, Tamils, during the strife between the LTT and the Sri Lankan government then were given the citizenship by the Congress government, and they became citizens of India. Idi Amin drove a lot of Indians out of Uganda, and they also were given citizenship at that point in time, but no religious discrimination was made. It was purely everybody who came. But this time the government of India said we cannot take back Muslims from Pakistan, because Pakistan was given a state, was given a country for Muslims, and they are an Islamic republic, and why should we take it back from them? Bangladesh has a huge problem. They already have been battling a Rohingya problem because the Rohingyas don't come directly to India. It's very tough to reach India. So what they do, they come to Bangladesh and then come to India. Today, if you go to a state like Kerala, for example, almost the entire local industry, including hotels, construction and others, are run by the Bangladeshis or Bengali speaking Hindus and Muslims. But that's not the point. They are illegal Bangladeshis in that. Most of them don't have Aadhaar cards. If they have, they got it fabricated. The government of India, in its wise wisdom, first let us go step by step. They have said, first let us do CAB. We will give refugees, those Hindus, Sikhs, as I said, the entire list, 6 religions, we will give them citizenship. Once that is done, we will then do NRC. And NRC is going to be a massive exercise. CAB is very easy for that matter. You just need a few proof. You need the people, you know who they are, because the IB has been tracking all those people. They are living in Delhi, they are living in Rajasthan, they are living in different states. Just give them the citizenship, be done with it. There will be, of course, a flood of citizens from coming across from Pakistan. God knows how they will reach here. But that to satisfy the 5 year. That means you should have lived here for a minimum of 5 years in India as a refugee to claim the status of being an Indian. The question comes, suppose a Pakistani Muslim wants to come to India and claim citizenship. How does it do it? A case in point would be singer Adnan Sami. Remember, he came to India because he felt persecuted in Pakistan, and after fulfilling all the conditions that were required as a refugee, he was given an Indian citizenship. Taslima Nasreen came to India as a refugee, stayed here, but she didn't want to take up an Indian citizenship because the Congress government then was not comfortable in giving her an Indian citizenship. She was instead suggested that she could try in European countries, so she went to Sweden and got one. The point, ladies and gentlemen, is about CAB and certain misconceptions. Let's go look at politicians and their roles. Tarun Gogoi, the then Chief Minister of Assam, wrote an official letter, mark my word, as a constitutional head of state, that state, to the then Prime Minister, Dr. Manmohan Singh, saying that, demanding rather, not even saying, that the religious minorities from Bangladesh who were facing persecution, mark my words, Tarun Gogoi's words, religious minorities, he never said Muslims. So he meant exactly what Mr. Amit Shah was telling today. He said they should be given Indian citizenship. The Communist Party, especially the CPM, who have been crying hoarse about the entire thing, saying, why are we doing this, demanded exactly the same thing. They also said, they also wrote to the Prime Minister, then Prime Minister Manmohan Singh, saying, we should give citizenship to the persecuted religious minorities coming from Bangladesh, because they are being hunted down in Bangladesh. Because there, a lot of Islamic gangs are roaming around now, even now, killing their own citizens. Forget even Hindu, they're killing the bloggers and others. So the political parties who are kind of now upping the ante, and as Prime Minister Narendra Modi indicated in a political rally yesterday, that the Congress party, the Indian National Congress, is behind the violence in Assam and other northeastern states. But that will be handled by the government in a different manner. There will be a tough carrot and stick approach. We've seen that with the police being sent in, with the army being sent in. At the same time, Home Minister Amit Shah calling the leaders from all these states, political leaders, student leaders, and talking to them and ensuring that the peace and normalcy will come. Because none of the northeastern states are going to be impacted that much, except for maybe Assam. Because the inline permits will ensure, and the restricted areas that they have will ensure that not many of these people can actually get citizenship and settle down in that state. They are worried about that. They can go anywhere. For example, when the Tibetans came and Dalai Lama came into India as a refugee along with his entire entourage, they were given 2 places, Dharmasala in the north and near Kodagu, they were given another place to settle down. That is down near Kurk. They were given a place to settle down. That is exactly what the government of India did then. But with these kind of refugees who came from Pakistan, they were not given that privilege. Think of it, our own citizens, our own brethren who by mistake decided to stay back in Pakistan, then realized their error, then realized the mistake, then got a persecution done on them. They wanted to move, but that was not agreed. This is what we need to understand. And I'm sure that in my submission that is coming forward, I will talk more about it. Earlier we spoke in reason about why CAB was brought in. One should remember that Indians, Sikhs, Parsis, Jains, and other communities, including Buddhists, other communities, were harassed in these countries like Pakistan, Afghanistan, and Bangladesh. The culture was wiped out. Remember, as I told you earlier, 80% of the Pakistani Hindus were SC and STs. They didn't come back to India because they found job opportunities which the Pakistanis were not willing to do, which was the menial jobs, especially in the sanitary sector. Along with that, the cultural identity of Indians were also destroyed. We saw in many cases in Pakistan, people were forcibly converted, especially girls were kidnapped and converted into Islam. The gurudwaras, the temples, everything was destroyed over a period of time. 70 years is indeed a long time. Afghanistan was worse, especially after the Soviets left and the Islamists took over. Bangladesh was no better. After the death of Sheikh Mujibur Rahman, Bangladesh went into an abyss. It has only recovered now and has a semblance of normalcy. But the underlying is still Islamist terror. That is where a majority of India's fake notes come in and terrorists creep into India. Today, we are making our borders secure. But along the way, we got to remember that 7 million Indians, Sikhs, Hindus, and other communities are trapped in Pakistan. They also want to come to India. Presently, there are supposed to be about 1 lakh Indians of Pakistani origin in India as refugees. As I mentioned before, 30,000 of them would immediately get citizenship. Irony of it is all that over the years from 1951 till date, till 2014, when the Congress regime was there, very few, very few, you can count on your fingers, were given citizenship. Especially in the years 2000 onwards till 2014, not even one. But ever since the Modi Sarkar took over, 10,000 Hindus, Sikhs, as I said, the persecuted religious minorities in Pakistan, those who were in India as per law then, after having been here for 11 years, 10,000 of them were given citizenship. That number will go up substantially now that we have a new law in place. But ladies and gentlemen, what I want to appeal to you is to understand the issue at depth. Quite often, people confuse you with messages. People tell you about NRC and then mix it up with detention camps. Detention camps have nothing to do with CAB. Detention camps are meant to keep people whose citizenship is in doubt. Every country worth its salt will not allow its territory to be run over by refugees. They want the citizens. They want a list of the citizens, and most countries have it. India possibly the only country in the world, the big countries in the world, that doesn't know who is its citizen and who is it not. And this is the Congress ploy, because they ruled a better part of the 70 odd years. They always wanted to ensure, because they were always doubtful of the Hindu vote bank, because they knew that they couldn't bank on them forever. And over the years, as the Hindu vote bank of Congress started declining, they started pandering to the Muslim vote bank, which again was being pandered by many other people. So you have the Indian Union Muslim League in Kerala, which is as rabid as Jinnah is. We have the Owaisis in Hyderabad. And of course, we have the Samajwadi Party in the UP and the UDF in Assam. There are many of them like that. They don't want the Muslim community to progress. If you remember the city of Hyderabad, the Owaisis have ensured that the Muslims are not educated. Because the moment somebody gets educated, they start questioning the system. And with the CAB, we have to ensure that we have a level playing field. If any religious minority feels persecuted either in Pakistan, Afghanistan or Bangladesh, and they want to come to India, they know they have a friendly government here. Where else will an Indian go? The so-called Rohingyas, all the Islamic countries cry about them, especially Pakistan. How many Rohingyas have Pakistan taken? 10? 20? How many have Saudi Arabia taken? How many have UAE taken? How many has Qatar taken? These are all flush with money. Why don't they just take 10, 20,000, 1 lakh Rohingyas and settle them in their country? It's countries with a lot of cash, with oil. Let them settle them there. No, they want Rohingyas to settle only in India. The idea is, like Assam, like many other states in India, especially West Bengal, if you look at the areas in West Bengal, the district that border Bangladesh, the Muslim population there have gone up substantially. That is because there was illegal migration, which is why Mamata Banerjee says, I will not allow NRC there, because moment you do that, they automatically get detected as infiltrators and they have to be pushed back. Now, pushing back is a contentious issue because Bangladesh is chock-a-block with refugees from Rohingyas who have already come there. They don't want to take all these characters, many of whom were Islamists who were driven out from there, from Bangladesh. The same exists in Assam. The irony of it today is that this particular Assam agitation right now seeks to stop Bengali-speaking Hindus from acquiring citizenship on India in Assam. They have no issue if they go to other states. At the same time, one should remember that AIUDF and other parties that are there pandering to the Muslim vote banks all initially came in from Bangladesh. And this is what is the most important thing. We got to realize that India, the social fabric of India, was sought to be destroyed earlier by appeasement politics. CAB has put rest to that. I'm sure each one of you will be kind of positive towards the entire thing to understand the issue at depth. I'm more than willing to listen to your questions. I'm sure that you can send in your responses also. But at the end of the day, one should remember that we had certain individuals, like there is Dr. Omendra in Jaipur, Jay is there. These are the people who have been working with Pakistani Hindus who come across from the border when CAB was not even in sight. They worked during the UPA regime. They worked now with the first NDA-1 government, trying to get visas for these unfortunate Pakistani Hindus and Sikhs who are living in camps in very dreadful condition. Hats off to you, Omi Bhaiya and Jay and others in your foundation who did an admirable job. You guys deserve the so-called awards that are given out by different governments. But more importantly, one should understand that in Pakistan and in Bangladesh, we need to identify and take people very, very carefully. We can't just let anybody and everybody come and claim that they're Hindus. There should be a way, there should be a methodology, there should be some paperwork to understand. Otherwise, you will have some terrorists sneaking in and claiming that they were kind of refugees in this country and they should be given citizenship. I'm sure the government of India has a methodology for that. Remember, end of the day, we have a famous quote, which we always use, a famous slogan that we always, Vasudhaiva Kutumbakam. We believe that we are here to take the rest of the world in. But let us not take it literally to the word. The CAB is a one step to ensure a wrong that was done with the Nehru-Liaquat Pact, which was signed, and the year it was signed, 1950. From 1951, I remember, till about something like 70, more than 40 lakh Hindus moved in from Pakistan into India. That is the numbers we're talking of, but we are not sure where they've gone. Because many of them, most of them didn't even get citizenship at that point in time. But definitely, they all moved in. Because Pakistan today is a failed state. Bangladesh is holding on to its last thread. Afghanistan is a gone case. Nobody wants to live in an unstable country. Let's welcome our brethren. Let's convert a mistake that we made in 1947 and bring back all our gods home. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen.